Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Amy attacks with the grizzly bears. Nick flashes in a Springjaw Trap and says that he's going to use it against the grizzly bears. Is it possible for Amy to save her grizzly bears using a Krosan Grip against the Springjaw Trap? Okay, so the first important piece of information we're going to need to answer this question is the fact that in a game of Magic, it's not possible for two players to cast a spell at the same time. Rather, we have a series of rules that help you determine which player has priority in a case where both players want to cast a spell or take another similar game action, like activating the ability of Springjaw Trap, at the same time. Next, let's observe that if Amy had something like a normal Naturalize, then it wouldn't really matter which player got priority to act first. That's because if Nick got to go first, then he could just sacrifice the Springjaw Trap to activate its ability, and because the sacrificing happens as part of the process of activating that ability, that means that by the time Amy got her opportunity to act, then the trap would not be in play anymore, so she would not have anything to Naturalize. On the other hand, if Amy got to go first, then she could play the Naturalize against Nick's Springjaw Trap, but in response, Nick could just activate his trap card and deal 3 damage to the grizzly bears anyway. So in that case, it wouldn't really matter which player got to go first, because either way the answer would be the same, that Nick would get to deal the 3 damage to the grizzly bears. However, in the case originally described, we had Amy using a Krosan Grip, and that changes everything. Because the Krosan Grip has split second, that means that if Amy gets to act first, then when she Krosan Grips the trap, Nick is not going to be able to activate it in response, and so she would be able to destroy the trap without her grizzly bears suffering any damage. So, which player would get priority in the case described above? And to answer that question, we're going to need this rule here, which says that if you have anything resolving on the stack, then the next person who gets priority is going to be the active player. In other words, the person whose turn it is. So, applying that to the situation that we have here, we can see that the Springjaw Trap is going to get played, and after it resolves, Amy, the active player, is going to be the first person to get priority to cast spells or activate abilities. That means that she can deploy the Krosan Grip against the trap at this time, and because it has split second, Nick is not going to be able to respond to the Krosan Grip by sacrificing the trap. This means Amy is able to save her grizzly bears with the Krosan Grip exactly the way she wanted to. Let's notice again that if things were a little bit different, and Amy had the Springjaw Trap and Nick had the Krosan Grip, then the answer would be completely different. Amy would again get priority because she's the active player. However, this time, because she has the Springjaw Trap, she can just activate that trap right away, and it's going to be in her graveyard before Nick even gets an opportunity to play the Krosan Grip against it. So that would change the entire outcome of that situation. Finally, I want to take a second to think a little bit about a practical consideration related to this question. When I initially described the situation at the beginning of the episode, I kind of made it sound like Nick just tapped 5 mana, put the Springjaw Trap directly into his graveyard, and said, I'm dealing 3 to the grizzly bears. And what would that change about this situation? Specifically, we can see that in that sort of situation, Nick isn't playing things out step by step the way he's probably officially supposed to. And that means that Amy would have a little bit of extra information that she wouldn't normally have access to when she's deciding whether she wants to play the Krosan Grip or not. So how would this change our answer? And this is a really important thing to think about, because I have a feeling that if you were going to see a play like this happen in a real live game of Magic, then the way I described it just now is probably pretty representative of what you would actually physically see the players doing. So the answer is, it wouldn't really change what I just said about the evaluation at all. If Nick wants to make a play, it's perfectly legitimate for him to describe that play as a block of actions rather than going through everything step by step. Even though the official way to do it would be for him to go through step by step, as long as the play that he's describing has a valid end game state that could legitimately be arrived at by making legal game decisions throughout the block of actions that he's talking about, then there's absolutely no problem at all with describing his play in a block of actions rather than going through step by step. And that's a good thing, because if you had to go through step by step officially for every play that you did in a game of Magic, well, let's just say the round timer would have to be a lot longer than 50 minutes. The thing is, you cannot use this tactic to deprive your opponent of an opportunity that they would have normally had to respond or otherwise interfere with the block of actions that you're proposing. So even if Nick makes the play by putting the Springjaw Trap right into his graveyard and tapping all 5 mana, the game still knows that in order to do that play, he has to go through it all step by step. And during that process, as we just saw, Amy would legitimately have an opportunity to cast that Krosan Grip. So, if Nick wanted to propose that block of actions, he could do it, but he would be taking a little bit of a risk by leaking some information to Amy prematurely. Amy wouldn't normally know what target Nick was planning on using that Springjaw Trap against. If Amy says okay, then that means she's agreeing to the shortcut Nick proposed, and everything is going to go exactly the way that he proposed it. On the other hand, Amy still does have the right to respond to that sequence of actions. And if she does so by, for example, playing the Krosan Grip, then she's going to have a little bit of extra information that she wouldn't have normally had during the time when she would have to decide whether she wanted to play the Krosan Grip if Nick were going through step by step. And that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.